Get in on the action and make your bet with Sports Interaction. Summer is heating up with baseball. Can the Jays make a run at the division?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Hey, but you can bet before the game, whichever way you think. Live and in play at all your favorite teams and hot dog contests. Woo! Woo! SportsInteraction.com/STPN or download the app to get started. It's 18 plus. And what do you have to do, Steve?
Please play responsibly.
Welcome to Young the Apex, everyone. I'm Tim Hauraney. Please head on over to Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating and a follow. Same goes with Apple Podcasts as well. Rate and review as it really helps us grow the show. You can also watch us on YouTube as well. You can follow me on social media at Tim Hauraney. Joining me today to talk about F1 returning from summer break is Jesse Blake. What's going on, man?
It's back. There's actual race this weekend. It's amazing. It's a long break. You know, every summer you're like, oh, it's nice that we get a little break. And then you get into it and you're like, this is so long. Like, I want to race again. So it's fun.
How was your summer break? Because you got back from vacation not too long ago?
Yeah. So we work on the sports calendar schedule. So this is the time we get to take time off. I was in the Bahamas for a little bit. It was fun. Nice. But yeah, now it's time to get back to work. You know, it's the fall. School's coming back. The fall's hitting, and all the sports are coming back. So we're getting back to the swing of things. So I'm excited to be back.
Sick. Thanks very much for doing this, man. Really appreciate it. So Dutch Grand Prix happening this weekend. Let's start with some breaking news as Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen are back at Haas for the 2024 championship. So Guenther Steiner looking to stick with two experienced drivers for the team. Both of them have a combined 346 career F1 starts. So I think that's a lot of experience. I think Jesse Steiner feels that, you know, they have a very strong driver pairing. And I think for him, he didn't see any reason to change it for next year. But I am actually quite surprised that Kevin Magnussen will be back.
Okay. I thought it was the right move for Haas because when you're a team at the back of the grid, you want some consistency. Like, that's how you're going to move forward and compete with the big guys, is if you have some other advantage, and that their advantage can be like, hey, we know what we got here and let's work around this. Let's do a long build with our drivers. Let's keep it going, keep the same team, and let's just build around that. And I think for Haas, like, that's the mentality they have to have. It's got to be a slow progression here. And if they see that these two individuals are the ones they want to build around, like, I'm 100% supporting that. And Guenther Steiner's, he's if he didn't like something, he would say it, you know, like, there's no doubt that we would hear about it if he wasn't a fan of either of these drivers. So I trust in his mentality going into this.
I think, like, for when I take a look at it, you know, Magnussen, obviously the longest serving Haas F1 driver now with this extension. So next year will be his 7th season with the team, but he has had a difficult first half to the start of this season. I do agree with you about having consistency with your driver lineup, and I think you're right when you do say that, especially for a team like Haas. Like, they need a strong driver pairing to get the most out of this car, and they need those drivers who have the most experience. Obviously, Magnussen and Hulkenberg do fit that bill, but I was just thinking from the standpoint that, you know, Magnussen, so he was coming off a multi-year deal, so that was done at the end of this season, while Hulkenberg, he still had an option on his contract for 2024. So I think, you know, this could be a 1-year deal for both drivers, but I was in the camp that I didn't think that we would see Kevin Magnussen back simply because of how long it took them to get the deal done. And second of all, just because of based on the results, it has been a bit of a struggle for him this season. Not saying that Kevin Magnussen is a bad driver. I think he's a great driver. I just think that, you know, there's quite a bit of turnover in F1 lately, and I was just getting that feeling. But the first half of the season, the team's qualifying pace was pretty good, pretty strong in some races. I mean, Hulkenberg in particular. But then during the races, tire degradation has really hurt this team. They do have some upgrades coming for this weekend. But, I mean, Jesse, when we take a look at that Haas, it still kind of looks like, you know, that old Ferrari, you know, like it still resembles that.
They don't have a race pace, that's the thing. And I wonder if they blame a lot of the situation, like where the drivers are in the driver's standing, on the car, and they don't blame Magnussen at all, because he finished twice in the points early on, both times in 10th, and it was a good little start in the first 4 races ish, and then after that it kind of tailed off and can't really finish ahead of 17th. But I feel like Haas looks at it and they say, we don't have the car to compete. How much can we blame the drivers for this?
Yeah, that's a good point that you make, because there was a lot of that in the statement that I had gotten today or early this morning. So yeah, I see what you're saying with that one. But
Yeah.
I mean, good for both drivers. I like both of them. I think they're both super talented, and they do deserve a seat in Formula One for sure. Other seats that aren't confirmed just yet for next season. So we have Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton deal. Jesse's still not done. AlphaTauri, both seats available in Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo's seats. And then Alfa Romeo, Bottas. Well, he's safe until the end of 2024, while Zhou he's still up in the air. Now, there is interest if Théo Pourchaire, does well with that F2 title. He could be in line for that seat too, but Thursday, Zhou did say that he's in a, quote, comfortable place. So, I mean, that's good. I think for Zhou Guan Yu, he should be back at Alfa Romeo. I think he's done an awesome job there. Really do.
Yeah, he's really coming to his own as a driver this year. Like he's been excellent. But you mentioned Lewis, and that's one of the, I guess, because he's so big, it takes a long time to work out those contracts. He's going to sign something massive, and it's going to be one of the biggest of his career because of just where the position he is. I don't know if he's angling for it to be his last F1 deal. Maybe sign something that's extra long, like 5 years, and then he's thinking about retirement after that. I just assume there's a lot of intricacies with Lewis Hamilton that goes into working out a contract with him. But it is curious that we're still at this point in late August, going into September, he still doesn't have a deal. Yeah,
no, it's a good point that you make. I think when we look at, these high profile athletes and, Jesse, from all the work that you do and all the contracts that, you've seen athletes sign, when you get to that level of the Hamiltons, the Bradys, whatever, Floyd Mayweather, like when you get up into that number, LeBron James, like you're looking at a contract that probably takes a long time to sort out because of probably, I would assume, more of the off-track commitment stuff rather than the on-track or at-track stuff.
Yeah, we're talking about one of the top 10 most famous athletes on planet Earth, just like period. The amount of lawyers that have to look at this, the amount of people on his staff and his team that go through this and comb over every fine detail. It makes sense that it's going to take a while, and I believe he's going to be back at Mercedes till he can finally kind of compete for another championship, I think, and then he'll probably sail off to the sunset if he can get the next one. I think that's a perfect ending for Lewis, but yeah, it's gonna take a little bit, and it hopefully gets done before we get to like the actual end of the season.
Why? Why would you want to go anywhere else?
Yeah,
right. If you're Lewis Hamilton, why would you want to leave Mercedes? Like, there's no way you're leaving this team that has helped you get to so many championships. You have to feel confident in the staff that you're working with. You've been working with a lot of that staff for so many years. And for drivers, if you pick up and you just move to another team, it actually takes a while for you to kind of get integrated with the team and what they do in their processes. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, and then there was that stuff with Ferrari that came out, a few months ago, where it's like, hey, the article that came out from, oh gosh, I can't remember the news outlet, but they had mentioned that he was looking at signing a longer term deal with Ferrari, and it just was like, no, come on, like he's not leaving Mercedes.
Yeah.
Like, why would he want to leave Mercedes?
You just look at it and you say, where is he going to go? There's one place, and there's just going to take a while to figure it out with that one place, because there's no place other on the grid that Lewis Hamilton can drive. He's not going to pair up with Max. He's not going to go with Ferrari, and that's kind of the only two options.
Oh yeah, 100%. The other seats available that forgot to mention was Logan Sergeant. That still hasn't been confirmed down at Williams. We can get into that more later, but yeah, that would be the other one. And then moving on from there, Carlos Sainz has actually come up in contract extension talks with Ferrari. So for Sainz, his contract isn't up until the end of 2024. Vasseur wants to get that deal done by the end of this season, where Sainz wants it done soon as well. I think for Carlos, like, he wants something longer term. And I think for him, stability is really important. I think he's done like quite a few 1-year deals in his time in F1, especially with Red Bull and Renault. And so I can only say that, you know, as a former driver, having the knowledge that you're safe at a team for at least a few more years, that does, for some, help the performance.
Mm-hmm. Is Ferrari happy with both drivers? Because it feels like it's been they've had a shaky relationship with the management. Both drivers, you know, we hear enough of it on the team radio during the race, and we see all the rumors and how contentious last year was with all the troubles, and some of that was driver error and some of that was team error. And I just wonder if you have any insight on, are they happy with both drivers and they want to keep going forward with them?
It seems that way. I think for Vasseur, it's kind of trying to find how they're going to build a team, you know, around their star asset in Charles Leclerc. You know, how are they going to do that? I don't necessarily think that Carlos Sainz would be happy with being just a number 2 driver on a team, even though we've seen in the past just how, you know, we're seeing at Red Bull, right? Like with Max Verstappen, where you need that one key area of focus, and then you have a solid number 2 who's going to fill in and defend and be there for the number 1 driver when need be. I don't know if Carlos Sainz is that driver. I mean, if we look at the start of this season, like, Sainz was pretty strong. I would say he's stronger than Leclerc. But in the past, I would say since Canada, you know, Leclerc has been the better driver. And so there's a lot of inconsistency there. And I think if you wanted this guy to be your number 1 driver, doesn't he have to be consistent, like straight out of the gates, right? Like, right. I don't think you can have these up and down scenarios, even though Leclerc is an incredible qualifier, but like the race pace, I think, is still a little bit in question. But tough for Ferrari, right? Like,
yeah, no, it's
rebuilding on the inside, like.
I don't know, because that's the way you build a modern Formula One team, is you have the star driver and you cater to him. The car a little is tilted a little bit towards to him, and he gets all the bigger press junkets and all that kind of stuff. And then you have your secondary driver who's he's always going to be there competing, but he kind of knows who's first, and he's always trying to take that spot. And I don't know if Ferrari believes fully that Charles Leclerc is that driver, and I'm just interested to see if they go down that path, you know, and they actually commit to it and say, hey, he's our number 1, here's our Max, he's our Lewis, you know, and this is the route we're going.
Yeah, I mean, Vasseur has mentioned it earlier this year, but it's like still kind of haven't really sort of seen it, and haven't really seen like Leclerc, I guess, with what they have, take advantage of what they have at this moment. I mean, Leclerc's contract is also up at the end of 2024. During the summer break, there were some rumors that he had signed an extension with Ferrari, but on Thursday, Leclerc shot those rumors down, saying there was no new deal and they had no discussions over the summer break. However, I think for Leclerc, it's important for him to get locked in at this team. And if Frederick Vasseur is going to make Leclerc the focal point of this team, I think for him, he has to be pretty transparent with that. I don't think he can go into a deal with either driver and say, you're number 1, you're number 2. I don't think like that works for either one. And I wonder if that destabilizes the team internally. And then when we look at that team a little bit more closely, I mean, all of the other restructuring they are doing internally, like, I think this is all it just wouldn't work. I think for Vasseur, he's going to have to find a way of being pretty transparent with what he wants.
Yeah. Now, I
else
can
it's just not going to
100%
work.
see
Jesse.
a situation where we're sitting here next season and Vasseur made the pick and he says Leclerc is our guy, and he internally, maybe not publicly, and where we start to see these rumors of Sainz going somewhere else, on one of these other seats on the grid.
Leclerc did run 21 kilometers during the summer break. Said he had never done that before, and he did all this on his TikTok, so I took a look at it. Jesse, have you ever run 21 kilometers?
Like consecutively?
Yeah.
Or in total?
One straight shot.
One straight shot? No, I think the most I've ever run is like 15K, because I did a 10K like a couple years ago, and I wouldn't go past 10, so I knew I could run 10, so I tried to do 15 once, and yeah, so I think that's it, but never 21. I'm not a marathon person. You're a runner though.
Yeah, man, I was disappointed in bro. Like, Jesus, what are you doing, man? Like, I was running like 24, 25K like per week for part of my training when I was racing. Now I do average about 30K for the week of running, and it's like, what the hell are you doing, man? Like, you're supposed to be, this is supposed to be your jam here. You need to be. No, I'm sure he's getting his fitness in other ways. I mean, like strength training obviously is important, but riding the bike and there's other forms that he can do. But yeah, I watched it over on his TikTok. Yeah.
This is easy, Sweaty.
Well, I watched it over on his. Yeah. I was watching on his TikTok, and he's like, yeah, this is the first time I've ever run. And I think at the start of it, he said like 23 kilometers. And I'm like, bro, come on. Like, this can't be your first time, right? Anyways.
No, that's shocking for a professional athlete, especially one who, Formula One car, it takes a lot of endurance to do that. You think that there's a lot of running involved, and I guess now is his time to get into running. So
I think it's different for every. I shouldn't beat him up too much. It's different for every driver. I mean, you look at Valtteri Bottas. That guy doesn't run. Like, he cycles everywhere. He's doing cycling competitions all over the world. I mean, hell, the guy beat up Alistair Brownlee at a cycling event in Scotland a few months ago, and Alistair Brownlee's like a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, I believe, in triathlon. So it's. These guys get their fitness in other ways, but yeah, I just was like, kind of like, wait a second, you've never done 23K straight before? I was just like kind of questioning that.
Even for fun,
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the Drivers' Championship. I mean, Max Verstappen obviously has this thing wrapped up, and we can chat about that in a little bit later, but I want to talk about second in the Drivers' Championship, because currently Sergio Perez occupies that second place with 189 points. So third is Fernando Alonso with 149. And then you've got Lewis Hamilton right behind with 148 points. And then in fifth is Leclerc, and he's a ways back. He's about 99 points. I am interested to see what happens with second in the Drivers' Championship, simply because of what could happen with Sergio. Lewis saying today that, the focus for him is trying to hunt down second in the championship, who is Sergio Perez. So, Jesse,
yes,
do you think that Sergio Perez will lose second place in the Drivers' Championship?
I'm gonna say he won't finish second. It's 5 consecutive races. He had that stretch where he couldn't get into Q3.
Yeah,
Sergio, he's been shaky, and I know his confidence has turned around lately. The second place finish in Belgium, before the summer break. That's great and all that, but I don't know if we're gonna see the consistency that Red Bull wants out of Sergio Perez this year. I think we see more of what we saw of him struggling in the middle part of the first half of the season, and I think these other cars are gonna get faster as the season goes on. I think that's just a guarantee of how it's going to work. Everybody's going to catch up to what Red Bull's doing as Red Bull transitions into next year's car and this car stops developing. They're going to slowly catch up to him. And it's not like everybody's been too far off of Sergio. They've been far off of Max, but everybody's been right there with Sergio at times. And I don't know if he can keep his skill together, keep his car on the road enough to keep second place. I don't know. I think Fernando's right there, and Lewis has been great. Like, Lewis in the last 5 races, he's been right in fourth or third. and there's the 1/8 place finish in there, but he's either been third or fourth. He's right there the whole time. So I don't know. I think one of Fernando or Lewis takes that second place spot.
Yeah, I think it'll be a tight battle. I mean, it all comes down, I think, at the end of the day, to Aston Martin and Mercedes making the right upgrades and Sergio not performing well. And we've seen the latter already. And so for these two other teams to make improvements, that can be done. Aston Martin is bringing upgrades for this weekend. They still have budget to keep developing this car for the rest of the season, which means they haven't blown all their money like some other teams already have on their car. Like Aston Martin still has a good runway of budget left to develop the car quite hard. And so, Alonso obviously was on fire at the start of the season. And who's to say that that's not going to happen for this back half of the season? Same goes with Lewis Hamilton. I mean, obviously it was a difficult start for him and the team, but since Monaco, they brought those upgrades. Lewis has actually been performing quite well. And they're not that far back from Sergio either. I mean, 40 points, 41 points for the other. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at this, if Sergio Perez feels that pressure, and if he begins to sort of, those performances start to go backwards again, I don't know Sergio's at that team next season, Jesse.
That's very interesting. Like, that's the next step, right? It's we gave you the fastest car on the grid, the second fastest car if you count Max's as the fastest, and you should finish second. Anything below second is a disappointment, and we can't trust you to move forward. So what's his contract situation? He's still under contract for next year, so they'd have to negotiate some sort of buyout to get him out of that deal.
Oh, it would have to be something, right? Because he's probably bringing sponsorship money with him as well at the same time. So there would need to be something like that done. But then you have to look, okay, well, who do you replace him with? So that means that drops back to Daniel Ricciardo, which we can get into later. But he would have to perform quite well and really, really blow the doors off of Yuki Tsunoda to have a chance at getting into that Red Bull Racing seat. It's like you said, and I think you summed it up quite well. He is in the fastest car on the grid. And if he's not winning the championship, he needs to be second. That's all there is to it. I mean, this car is probably one of the most dominant race cars, if not the dominant race car we have ever seen, ever. And, watching racing since, I was 6 years old. So it's a long time, Jesse. So
yeah, no, I don't know what they've done. Like the magic of the tire degradation, like that's it's the DRS, and then the tires don't deg, and then the downforce is incredible. Like everything about the car is magic. And then you add in that they consistently have the fastest pit stops. They never screw up their race strategy. It's been a perfect team, and they're 100%. Undefeated so far this season for a reason. And if you have a driver who can't finish second with a perfect car and a perfect team around him, you got to ask the hard questions. Can if we gave him everything he needs and he can't do it, then what do we do moving forward? What are we doing? 100%.
100%. So there still is quite a bit of racing left to do. So there's a few things that I'm looking forward to for the rest of the season. My first one is Red Bull Racing, just Jesse running the table on this thing. It would be history. I mean, McLaren got close to winning every single race in a season back in 1988. So Red Bull would literally be the only team to have done it if they can complete the season having won every single race for this season here on out. And I want to see it. I've never seen it before. I want to see it, Jesse. Like I am now, I am in on this storyline just simply because the story, if either way, if they do it, that you never see anything like that again, probably. Second of all, if they lose a race, the story from that is going to be incredible too. So either way, I'm all in on this one, buddy.
Yeah, how can you not root for that at this point? The drivers' championship and the constructors are locked up. Like it's over. So you might as well root for something, and we should all be rooting for seeing the greatest racing season of all time. Like it'd be so exciting. Could you imagine the last race? The excitement that's going into that, the amount of hype. Everybody's just tuned in to see if they can actually do it. It'd be unreal. And yeah, I'm rooting for the same thing.
Yeah, me too. I also outside, I think for F1, I mean, obviously it probably hasn't been good for ratings and stuff like that for this season. But again, you got to look at it this way. Like 10 years from now, you're going to be like, we're going to look back, and be like, that was pretty awesome what they were able to do, because we've never seen anything like that before. I mean, right now it could be just like, I'm kind of bored of this and walk away from it, but not for me. I'm too invested in this right now to just turn and walk away. But I think like that leads us into next season, where I think for Formula One, I think there's an easy way of turning this into a positive, right? I mean, obviously like Red Bull is going to be coming in as the favorite, but these teams are going to make big strides in the wintertime. How do you think F1 sort of spins this one?
Yeah, I think you got to celebrate what is happening. It's historic. Yeah. You're going to watch the greatest car of all time is what we're going to be watching. And F1 needs to hammer that home and make that point. It has to be sort of a celebration of the history of the sport, and not just, hey, everyone's kind of bored watching the season. And I know there's been a lot of grumpy fans talking about that, and I don't really support it, because you need to be watching the history too. Every race, every game, every match, whatever you're watching, can't be a tight game. There are blowouts, and when you have a team that's this dominant, it's historic and it's magical to watch, because this doesn't happen. It has never happened. It's special.
For some more records that Red Bull could actually break this season, there are a few. Verstappen, most consecutive wins, so that's coming up now, so he can equal the record this weekend. So Vettel holds that record with 9 straight wins, so he set that in 2013, and Verstappen can equal him with a win at his home Grand Prix. Biggest championship winning margin, so Vettel holds that record too, but Verstappen could break it this season. And I get my stats out here. So 155 points. That's what separated Vettel and Fernando Alonso back in 2013. Vettel obviously winning that championship, Alonso finishing second. Verstappen is currently, he's getting close, Jesse, to that number. At the moment, it's 125 points from Verstappen to Perez in second, and that could grow. He doesn't need many more points. I mean, he gets 25 points for a win, so... Yeah. And if Sergio has some bad performances, right, that thing's just going to keep ballooning. So I think that could be a stat that
seems like an easy one to break.
Yeah, he could be he's on his way to doing that. Consecutive F1 podium scores. So Michael Schumacher holds the record with that. 19 consecutive podium finishes. Since last year's Abu Dhabi Grand Prix for Verstappen, he's been on the podium 13 races. So 13 races, he's been on the podium. So he could break that record as well. And that's a record that's stood for quite a long time. We think of Schumacher back at Ferrari. So that's very impressive. My second thing that I want to see, because I'd mentioned a few. So if Red Bull can't win all the races, Jesse, then I want to see Fernando Alonso capture his 33rd win.
Yes.
That's it.
No, that'd be spectacular. I think all of Formula One would be behind that.
I think all of Spain is going through Alonso Mania at the moment. I mean, if you go back to the Miami Open, when tennis number one, world number one, Carlos Alcaraz wrote 33 ? Soon on the camera lens, and that's referring to Alonso getting his 33rd win. And at the time he wrote that, Alonso was crushing it at the beginning of the season. So I think there's a lot of people who want that, especially in Spain, but I want to see it as well because I think it's a good story. And I also, I'm an Alonso fan too. So it'd be cool.
And you
I'd like to see that.
mentioned how hot of a start Aston Martin was to start the season, and the upgrades that they have, and everything they've been doing in the car has been spectacular to watch. Like, you watch a team, you see a team go from kind of the midfield to, hey, now we're going to jump into this area. We're going to try and compete with Ferrari and Mercedes and whenever we can sneak in there and beat Red Bull, we're going to be in that competition. And it's been cool to see actually them invest in this team and see the results. That's been spectacular. I think we're seeing those results this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Jesse. So, what are a few things you're looking forward to for the rest of the season?
So we touched on it a little bit off the top, but the drivers and like where they're shuffling is some of my favorite stuff at F1. And the only American driver on the grid right now, Logan Sergeant, hasn't registered a point all season long, and Albon has been like one of my favorite drivers this season because of the leap he's taken from last year to this year. I think Albon's been spectacular, and having Sargent in the other seat doing literally nothing and getting no points has been tough to watch. And I wonder, he's on a 1-year contract. It's his rookie season. You're supposed to give them a little leeway when they're rookies, but is he going to be back next year? Are we going to see Logan Sergeant in F1 next season?
I think if he can pull together some consistent finishes, like it's really tough. Like you say it well with Alex. I mean, the guy he's absolutely incredible right now, and he's driving the wheels off a car that's not that great. I think for Logan, obviously his highest finish this season is 11th at the British Grand Prix, and I do want to see more like from him. Like in Saudi Arabia, I thought his qualifying was pretty impressive until he had his lap time deleted. That's a really difficult racetrack, especially if you're a rookie in an F1 car. Rocketing around that racetrack is extremely difficult to handle. But I think for Logan in particular, if he's able to stay consistent, if he's able to kind of close this lap delta that currently sits between himself and Alex, then I think like he could have a good shot at coming back. I mean, I know, it's sitting down with James Vowles when we were at the British Grand Prix, he was very, he spoke very highly of Logan. He really believes in him. And it's funny, Jesse, if you go back to the time when James Vowles was at Mercedes, part of his job was like evaluating younger talent. And one of the talents that came through their door to do some testing with the team in the simulator was Logan. And James passed on him, like passed on Logan. And now the two are working together where James is the team boss. Logan obviously is the driver. And you have to wonder, like, you passed on this guy years ago. Yeah. And now all of a sudden he's driving your car and you're really backing him here. And I'm just like, okay, well, he must be doing something right. Like Logan has to be doing what he's being told, obviously. But I think it's like I had said, that most important thing is that he closes that delta down between him and Alex, which could be tough because the next two races, he knows the tracks. But then once we get away from these next two races, those are tracks he's never driven on. The likes of like Singapore, Qatar, Japan, like those are going to be tough tracks for him.
Yeah, and you see how cutthroat that Red Bull was with Nick DeVries. You wonder if that it goes to the other parts of the grid and other teams start looking at, hey, there's a lot of great drivers out there right now. Like IndyCar is just filled with spectacular drivers. F2 is just loaded with great drivers. And should we just move on and try with somebody else, who can get results a little quicker?
Yeah, it's and I think like that's a good point too that you make. When we look at Williams' young driver program, like this is all kind of new for them. They've never really had a very strong young drivers program that's been filled with some talent. And now they have talent in that pipeline. Logan obviously being a part of that pipeline at the same time. I think it's for Williams' best interest that he does well so they can justify their driver program. So Be interesting.
And then my other storyline I was looking forward to for the second half of the season is another driver and his situation maybe moving up in the world or just finding a seat for next season is Daniel Ricciardo. The face of F1 in some ways, the guy who's got one of the highest profiles out of the mid-pack, the star of Drive to Survive. I want to see how he does in the AlphaTauri, if he can score points, if he can get ahead of Yuki for the rest of the season. We'll see how it goes, and if he's an actual threat to replace Sergio Perez.
Good one. I think, the thing with it is that Yuki's driving really well right now. And then obviously Daniel's only been back in F1 for 2 races. And I think if we look at what Daniel had done at the Belgian Grand Prix, if he hadn't have had his quali lap deleted, I think he probably would have outqualified Yuki for that race. And I think he could have been close to scoring some points in that weekend. And so I think for a driver like Daniel, it's like I'd mentioned earlier, he really has to blow the doors off of Tsunoda. And I like Yuki. I think he's a great talent. I think he's a really good driver. I think Daniel can beat him, and I think he probably should, even though, Yuki's got a 3-point gap on him, right now. I still think that Daniel can minimize that and put in some good performances. But again, there's so much moving to that. Hey Jesse, you need Sergio to do bad, and you need Daniel Ricciardo to do really well for them to justify moving him up.
Yeah, I think the most logical thing that happens here is he just comes back to AlphaTauri next year. They re-up him, maybe another 1-year deal, and he gets a full season there, and then you just see how that goes. And I think that's where he'll be on the grid.
What was the last thing I wanted to bring up? Oh yeah, okay. So if you guys didn't see it, Valtteri Bottas, did you see him dressed up as Duff Man?
No,
doing a bike race?
Duff Man from The Simpsons?
Yeah. Okay. So dude's in Colorado with his girlfriend for most of the summer break, and he, brought his bike. He's a huge cyclist, like I'd mentioned. I've talked to Valtteri offline about this a whole bunch of times about biking and where he likes to go, and he bikes all over the place, and I bike a lot too, so we have a lot in common. So we chat a lot about that. But he was in Colorado, and he entered this bike race, and basically you have to wear a costume for it. It's a big bike race, and he dressed up as Duff Man, and I didn't know what the actual prize was of all of this, but Valtteri says that the prize for the best costume was you win your weight in beer, and I really wanted to win the prize. Obviously, it was mainly an American crowd, so I went for The Simpsons and Duff Man. So I don't know if you've seen this yet, but it's awesome, man. It's so good. I gotta talk to the post production about putting a picture of it.
Yeah, I know. We'll put it on the screen right now. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it on my computer, and he won. He won the competition. It says so. He donated all of it to the people attending the race and the spectators and the commentators. But he looks incredible.
He does.
What a guy. He just seems like he has the most fun in life. He's out there cycling as Duff Man. Beautiful.
What a legend, though, right?
Yeah.
Started the season, he's got the mullet. Just, 0 Fs. The guy's been, honestly, he's been awesome, man. He's, ever since he moved away from Mercedes, I feel that, Valtteri's, he just seems so relaxed. He's just having so much fun. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's great. I think it's so good, dude. Duff, man. And then he did, a 100-mile bike race after that. So
he could easily be a professional cycler, right?
Yes,
he can compete in any profession in cycling in the world, right? In any league. Do they have cycling leagues? Any race, I guess?
Well, yeah, they got the Tour de France and they got the Vuelta. They've got, oh my God, man, there's so many bike races. Yeah. The big one, obviously, is the Tour, right? But for Valtteri, he's in almost as good a shape as some of those, riders that are at the back. He's extremely fit. Cycling shape is incredible, but yeah, he's just a he's a friggin' content machine right now. He's just awesome, dude.
Content
Absolutely
machine,
love it.
that's good.
I absolutely love it. His Instagram's great too. Like, it's a great follow. Anything else I want to talk about? I guess that's pretty much everything. I mean, Anthony Joshua was in the paddock today at the Dutch Grand Prix. He's getting everybody ready, getting everybody in fighting shape for the race this weekend. Hopefully it's a good one. If you guys have any questions throughout the race weekend, hit me up on Twitter, or I guess X, or whatever the hell they're calling it now. And, send me a DM or hit me up on Twitter to ask some questions, and I'll get it into the debrief on Sunday. Jesse, I guess you guys have a big podcast later on today.
Yeah. We have an emergency Austin Matthews signed contract podcast coming out. If there are any hockey fans listening to this podcast right now, search up the Steve Dangle podcast, and you'll get that when this one's out already. And Tim, are we allowed to talk about where you'll be in the back half of this F1 season?
Yeah, good. Yeah, so we're going to be traveling to SDPN. Myself, we're going to be going to some more races this year. We're going to go to the U.S. Grand Prix in COTA. We're going to Mexico, and we are also going to Vegas as well. So have some content coming out from there. Same with TSN as well. I'll be doing some work for them while I'm at these races at the same time. So really looking forward to covering these events. This will be the most amount of F1 races I've been able to get to, which is great. It's been a lot of fun. We have some big interviews coming as well. Taping one later today, and then we've got 2 other big ones that we're working on at this time as well for the podcast. So that should be a lot of fun. So looking forward to it. Jesse, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the emergency pod later today. I saw Steve's TikTok yesterday.
Yeah. Where he's just screaming. Like, that's what he does best, just really loud noises.
Oh my God, man. I had to send it to my girlfriend, and I'm like, this guy's awesome. Like, you're going to see this. Like, like, we actually sit down and watch LFR now just because it's like entertaining, dude. Like,
yeah, no, it's the crown jewel of YouTube content. It's awesome.
Talk about another content machine. Holy cow.
Oh, yeah.
Jesse, thanks again, man. Let everybody know where they can find you on social media, and what else you got going on outside of the SDP.
So I got my own podcast on the side, Jesse Blake Sports Report. New episode comes out tomorrow morning. Search at that. There's going to be Austin Matthews talk on that as well. But I do all sports, so we talk about basketball, baseball, football sometimes. So yeah, check that out. And follow Tim. Follow at Tim Hauraney for every race weekend, because he is the best follow throughout race weekend for like news updates, or to like, if there's something controversial that happens, you always have like, hey, this is what the FIA is saying about this. So he's a great follow through race weekend, and also a great content machine. So follow Tim Hauraney.
Thanks, Jesse. I appreciate it. And make sure to give Nailing the Apex a listen or a watch. We're on YouTube. You can see us there. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Please head over to either platform. Give us a 5-star rating, a follow, subscribe, write a review if you could. It helps us grow the show. And like you said, Jesse said, you can follow me on social media at Tim Hauraney. Jesse, thanks again, man. Really appreciate you taking the time. Everybody, enjoy the race weekend, Dutch Grand Prix.